were, so it's hard to give an exact figure. However, presumably, it was between 200 and 230 people. The people who were watching all this were shocked. They could not believe that there was not a single awakened person among all of them, and this is what the scientists really thought. Which meant that the clearance rate for the row was extremely low. And if they fail to complete the mission within the next 48 hours, this gate will simply explode. The head of the organization was observing all this. He asked the assistant how the evacuation of people from enterprises within a radius of 2 kilometers was going. His aide said there's no one left within 1 kilometer, but those within 2 kilometers are absolutely refusing to evacuate. Then he added that in the past, always the explosion of disgust rarely went beyond 1 kilometer, so one could not worry too much. The head of the organization said that one could just go crazy from it. He didn't understand how they could do that. Their lives were at stake, and they were worried about their business. And executives wouldn't even go to work, unlike regular employees. He turned to the deputy, asking him to write that they had insisted on evacuating, and reporters would be arriving in 2 hours. If they show them the faxes, mail, and phone calls, they will write articles about the company not caring about worker safety. The aide replied that he understood everything, and the head of the organization asked if he found out the identity of the homeless man and confirmed that it was Junior Lieutenant Kim In-chan. The deputy said that's right. That's him, a graduate of the police academy, 43 years old at the moment. Junior Lieutenant Kim In-chan was a fellow aide, a graduate of the same academy. Because of his high sense of justice, he was dishonorably discharged, although his comrades respected him. The head of the organization thought for a while. After that, she said that it would be good if he took charge and was able to clear the gate. However, the deputy said there was no information about the man in the clothing who was standing next to him. They thought the search wouldn't be any trouble because of his strange clothing, but in fact, nothing could be found. It's like he just appeared there out of nowhere. There isn't even any false information, as if this man didn't exist at all. And the fact that his face is not visible on the camera is suspicious. At this point, he showed the surveillance footage. The head of the organization said that all the people who were around were caught in the gate, so it would not be possible to find out anything, and they only have to wait for the opening of the gate, which will happen in 2 days. He looked at the screen that had the stats on it and said that maybe all of them were probably even dead by now. Some time had passed since then. There was a live broadcast on the news saying that there were 2 hours left before the gate closed. The reporters were evacuated for safety reasons, so they decided to broadcast from cameras that had been installed inside the station itself. They asked all residents watching the broadcast to pray. Many residents were watching this broadcast. However, most were only watching it for the explosion, and now it was 5 minutes before the gate closed. And so, as that time began to run out, the anchor of the TV program began counting down the countdown. The organization also kept an eye on everything that was happening with cameras. However, when the time was up, nothing happened. People were surprised, namely the head of the organization. He didn't understand why the gate hadn't exploded yet, because he thought it would actually happen. He watched all of this and wondered if the people who had gotten in were really able to clear the gate of this rank. At that moment, a very bright light appeared in the place where the gate had been opened, and people began to appear and come out from there. The live broadcast continued. There were so many viewers there watching it all live. When the people came out of the portal, Ken Z was carrying someone on his back. At this moment, he thought that he had almost single-handedly dealt with a huge number of monsters, and then during the exit of the gate, he simply disappeared. He thought about the fact that he probably wasn't dreaming but was actually happening. However, he doesn't understand how that guy managed to do all this. Jin Yu was walking through one of the cities at this moment and was shocked as he looked around. He didn't understand how people could think of this. Kang Se-ren said that mopping up the gate is like a miracle, so he left right away so as not to cause trouble. However, he doesn't know what to do now. But Jin Yu decided not to worry about it too much, because he would figure something out anyway. He could earn some money and buy that flying thing he saw in the sky. However, then suddenly, as he passed by further down the street, he suddenly saw a very familiar silhouette. He looked directly at the man and called out his name. The guy turned to Sang Lin, shouting it across the street. A man of good build immediately turned around and asked who was calling him. He nervously started looking around the people in the crowd to see who it was. Jin Yu's eyes directly shone with joy and he asked, "It's him, he's not wrong, right?" in his words. Sang Lin just stared at him silently for a while. After that, with a frightened voice and look, he asked if it was really the leader. The guy said of course it was him. In fact, he didn't even expect to see him in this place. But he didn't have time to finish his sentence, because Sang Lin started running away from him, trying to escape. However, he wasn't in very good physical shape, so he couldn't run far. Jin Yu started to use his abilities. He looked at him angrily and said that he was just an idiot. How dare he even run away from him? He got very angry and said that the guy was not going to live now. However, at this moment, he tried to calm down a bit. He stopped using his strength and looked at Sang Lin carefully. Jin Yu was surprised. He didn't understand why the guy was so clumsy, as if he had never practiced martial arts. In fact, in the past, when Sang Lin was still living in their world, he ran so fast that Jin Yu, even with his flying speed, could only catch him after several attempts. The leader at this point thought, maybe it's just not him in the face, of course, similar only got a little. And the belly's showing. However, Jin Yu still had one more option left. He thought that maybe the guy had just lost his energy. Sang Lin turned around and tried to run away from him and didn't even look forward. He wondered if it was really him just now. But then suddenly he stopped, for when he looked forward he saw his leader. Sang Lin was startled. He asked the man if he was seriously using martial arts now. How did he not lose his inner energy? Jin Yu looked at him and asked, meaning that he was admitting that even after recognizing him, he tried to escape. The guy already regretted his words. However, he thought that the doctor would be even worse next, so he said that it was really true. After that, they had a short silence. Sang Lin didn't know what to do. After all, if he kept silent, the leader would just kill him. Therefore, he decided that the best way would be to apologize. He fell on his knees before the master and began to praise the heavenly leader of the protector. People who passed by them didn't realize what was going on. Some of them thought it was probably just them shooting some video, maybe just a prank. Passers-by thought that people had gone completely crazy. They would do anything for some views. Sang Lin even blushed in shame at this moment. He actually didn't know that he would have to fall on his knees in the middle of the street at this age. So after a while he started to stand up. However, he failed, and he fell to the floor again. Sang Lin was under the influence of the leader's strength. In fact, his strength was so great that the guy couldn't even move, and in order to stand up, he would need energy that would accumulate over 60 years for sure. Sang Lin forcefully suggested that he go somewhere else and talk privately there, so that so many people wouldn't be looking at them. Jin Yu agreed to the proposal after all, and after a while they came to a cafe where they sat down at a small table opposite each other. Sang Lin had been in this world for 22 years, and since he had no one to practice his language with, he had safely left his head. He had no one to practice the language with, but he had forgotten the faces of many people, except for the leader, who he could not forget. On their last meeting before the guy went into the portal, he was a little over 30, and now when a guy looks at him, you can't even give him 20 years old. He looks so young. Jin Yu immediately turned to the guy and told him that the greeting would not be put off, and if he didn't tell a good reason why he ran away, he would just kill him. Sang Lin even began to tremble with fear. He asked how the master could even calmly say such scary things, but really, he needed to think his words over well, lest it really come true. He stammered and replied that, in fact, he'd just thought he'd imagined it. Jin Yu asked what exactly he meant. The guy said that, in fact, after he arrived at this place, he still saw his face for a long time. However, as he ran away screaming, the Lord dissolved like smoke. Sang Lin then thought that it was just an illusion. According to experts, the lack of being able to go home made the guy stressed out, but then he thought that the word didn't fit much and said it was just an angry affliction. Sang Lin at this moment took out his tear-inducing eye drops and said that his appearance reminded him of his homeland. The doctor said that if he avoided it, he could be cured. That was why he decided that it would be good to run away. Jin Yu reacted calmly to this information. Then the guy thought that he must be doing well after all. Sang Lin said that it had actually been a long time since his last illusion. However, he had not been going through the best of times recently. At this point, he cried and said that he was scared that his ailment would reappear, so he decided to run away. The guy started to apologize to the Lord. Jin Yu thought at this moment that he had actually learned the language quite quickly with his technique, but Sang Lin was definitely having a hard time. Being alone had taken its toll on him, and the loss of energy was taking its toll. Jin Yu looked at the guy and realized that his core was now devastated, and he didn't know how to move forward. However, at that moment, their conversation was interrupted by the voice of a waiter who asked if they could hurry up with their order. Sang Lin immediately took the menu and said that of course they would order everything now. His sadness was gone. Then the guy showed the menu to the gentleman and asked what he would have. Jin Yu started to scrutinize the menu and asked what kind of place it was anyway. Sang Lin said that this place serves coffee and asked, "Is this really the first time he's heard of a cafe?" Jin Yu said that of course. After all, he had only been in this world for 2 days, if not less. The guy, hearing this, was very surprised and asked how he then managed to master the language in such a short time, because it is quite complex. The gentleman said how could he not understand, because they were taught techniques for recognizing language. The waiter at this moment started walking towards them because he wanted to take the order quickly. San Lin continued talking and said that it meant that the leader had come from the heavenly palace the previous day. Jin Yu said a little earlier. And after that, he pointed at the waiter and suggested to order drinks first because that guy is already looking at them. Sang Lin agreed to do so. Afterward, he asked the gentleman if he needed to explain. However, the man said he didn't need to. He would figure it out on his own. Jin Yu began to scrutinize the menu. He thought that since all the drinks were in order, it meant that the first one should be the most delicious. First on the menu was espresso, and when their drinks were brought to them, Sang Lin, smiling, asked if he had ever tried this coffee before. Jin Yu began to scrutinize his drink and wondered if he thought he had time for this. However, the cup is nice enough. The guy then glowered and told him to definitely try it. He was actually curious to see his reaction because this kind of coffee is quite bitter. Jin Yu then took his cup and started tasting it, saying that now and let's see what it tastes like. However, when the gentleman took one sip, there was no particular reaction. Sang Lin, seeing this, was very surprised. He thought that the man would shout nervously and spit out the drink, but at this moment, Sang Lin heard his voice in his head. It was a telepathy ability. Jin Yu told him not to say anything and just listen. The master said it was poison. Someone put it in the drink and he felt it. Jin Yu looked at his interlocutor carefully and said that since he had only recently arrived in this place and had not made any enemies yet, Sang Lin was their target. The boy was very surprised and the gentleman continued. He said that judging by the lack of signs of added poison, it was the work of professionals. Jin Yu pointed his finger at his drink and told him to present it to his lips. However, under no circumstances did he drink it. Sang Lin didn't answer anything to this. She just sat there and looked at the gentleman. Then the man got nervous and asked if he had already been poisoned. If that was really the case, then let him blink at him twice. The boy laughed upon hearing this. He already wanted to say something to the leader. However, he looked at him angrily and told him not to open his mouth. Sang Lin didn't listen to him and said that it wasn't really poison. After all, this drink always has that flavor. Jin Yu wasn't surprised yet. He said that it couldn't be. In fact, for a moment, his heart beat faster. Sang Lin calmly said that it was actually the effect of the caffeine, such and such, and it was quite normal. But at that moment, the gentleman poured a few drops of coffee on the table and said it was definitely poison, for it dissolved the table. Sang Lin, of course, didn't believe it, but said that it was definitely him, and also wondered why he didn't use telepathy in that case. What if the assassin was watching them right now? Jin Yu looked at the guy carefully and said that he thought the guy had already scattered a long time ago. Sang Lin agreed with him, and he actually did it to avoid draining him more. The guy at this moment thought that the Lord had assumed it was poison, used internal energy, and thus messed up the table. But that didn't surprise him much. After all, there would be many more such situations in the future, so there was no point in paying much attention to it. Suddenly he thought of the fact that Jin Yu had just arrived and was going to stay for a long time. So he asked the gentleman if he had a place to stay. The gentleman said of course he had. Then the lad inquired, and where the place was. Jin Yu pointed his finger at Sang Lin. The guy was startled and asked if he meant him. Sang Lin immediately got up from his seat, knocking over his coffee, and said that it couldn't be done. He'd better find a home for him. Jin Yu waved his hand and asked if it was okay to leave his subordinate alone, and also laughed after saying this. Sang Lin kneeled down at this moment and began to beg the Lord not to do this. After all, you can't go to him. The man was surprised and asked why he couldn't. Let him think carefully, because there would be no turning back once he had made his decision. He put his arm around Sang Lin and laughed, asking what would happen if he chased him and then came to the house. After all, he wouldn't be able to stop him. Jin Yu tapped him on the shoulder with strong punches and told him to better see him off by himself. Sang Lin realized at this moment that he had no choice after all. He was suddenly scared, because he doesn't know what his wife and daughter would think if he brought a strange guy from the street home. Jin Yu hugged him and said that it was wonderful that they had met again. The guy, holding back his emotions, said that he was very happy to meet him too. At this time, the girl sat at her desk and looked out the window, thinking about her own things. She was not very cheerful, but then suddenly she heard the voices of the guys who were nearby. One of them said it was unbelievable and asked how they had managed to clear the D-level gate without a single awakened person. She wasn't much interested in that, however. One of the guys said that the casualties were only about 40 people, and they also said that there was an unknown and a high-ranked awakened one. His friend speculated that maybe he just had an unusual defense damage or some special skill. The girl, when she heard about the high-ranked awakened man, was immediately interested. However, all was not well in the awakened department. The chief came in and slapped his hand on the table, asking what was going on at all. He asked if the convention didn't spell out that those who awakened in Korea belong to that country. Why are they hiding the data of the awakened one? Does the organization really want to appropriate it for themselves? He addressed the supervisor Khan, but he did not answer anything. So the supervisor asked him to say a word. Leader Han had interrogated everyone who had come out of the portal before. One of the homeless people said that a strange guy had single-handedly destroyed thousands of monsters here. Another added that there was actually another awakened one from China. However, he did not participate in this battle. On the 6th day, the monsters became so numerous that absolutely everyone had to fight, even ordinary people who had never held a weapon in their lives. Leader Han thought that since that guy handled everyone alone, only 22 people were able to awaken. 178 level D pervert came out, but 156 of them were still ordinary civilians. This fact is beyond the bounds of reason. If they disclose it, they will be criticized by international society. Everyone, of course, will think that the organization is up to something, so they will pass off the awakened as ordinary citizens. While Han was being scolded, all he could think about was that the existence of this guy named Wang Jiyu was quite hard to believe at all, and that awakened man from China had also left in time. He realized that they would only be able to get answers to their questions when Kim In-chan, who was lying under IVs in the hospital, woke up. Jin Yu and his partner were still sitting in the cafe. Sang Lin suddenly wondered what had happened to the great empire since he had to go through the gate. The man replied that nothing of the sort had happened. The people there would just manage without him. However, Sang Lin wondered if he hadn't told them anything, and asked if the leader's departure wouldn't cause everyone's excitement. He also said that Zhu Zheng is probably out of place there. However, Jin Yu said that they are actually all dead already. Sang Lin was shocked when he heard this. He asked how on earth it had happened. Did the war really start and they died there? However, he then said that no one would go against the empire. Maybe it's some kind of civil war, or maybe it's a worldwide epidemic. Jin Yu calmly replied that there was actually nothing like that. It was just that they all died a natural death. However, the boy kept up with him and asked why, in that case, it had happened. The master told Sang Lin that after he left, a whole 90 years had passed, his relatives dying one after another. Their children and grandchildren stayed with him. However, it was no longer the same. his descendants considered him a god. Sang Lin, upon hearing this information, realized that of his companions, he was the only one left, and that was it. He was silent for a while, and then he said that only 22 years had passed in this world. Jin Yu was surprised and said that it was quite a lot. However, the guy laughed and said that it was almost nothing compared to them. However, Sang Lin asked why, after these 90 years, he had not aged at all, but had only even gotten younger. At that moment, he reached up to stroke his cheek. Jin Yu immediately took his hand away and said that after his second reincarnation and 2-time rebirths, he no longer aged. Sang Lin raised a finger up and said that in any case, those who had been able to go back in time could be counted on their fingers, and he had done it twice, although it was not something one would expect from a leader. Jin Yu really liked being praised, so he smiled and said that of course he was. They were silent for a while. After that, the boy asked how he had managed not to lose energy when he came to this world. Jin Yu, using his abilities and making a magic ball, said that it was long enough to explain. However, it didn't do without it, and he was now restoring it. But then the master inquired and said that he must have lost his completely. Sang Lin said that was right. The remaining part had dissipated into his body, and that was all that was left. He is now an ordinary person. But then, suddenly he had a thought, and the boy wondered if the leader had any chance at all of recovering his energy. Jin Yu, after briefly thinking, said that why not? In principle, it was possible. However, the energy in this month is polluted, so cultivation will most likely not be of any benefit. Jin Yu thought about it, and said that was why he didn't do it. But then he decided that maybe there was a clear space somewhere in this place. He told Sang Lin that if he gathered the energy and he himself blocked the barrier, there should be no problem. The boy jumped up from his seat when he heard this and asked in surprise if he could really do it. Jin Yu looked at him carefully and asked him if he really wanted him to do this. Sang Lin, with tears in his eyes, even started to beg him, because he really wanted to do it. Then the gentleman smiled evilly and asked if he could stay with him in that case. Sang Lin immediately bowed to him and said of course, but he thought that he would still come even if he refused him. At that time, the guy walked closer to the leader and asked if he had met that strange man at the gates of the heavenly palace. He said it was actually more like a dream, so he didn't remember all the details, only that it took away his energy. Jin Yu thought about it and said that he had met him too, and he had taken away more than half of his strength. Sang Lin, hearing this, got angry and said that it meant that that stranger had taken away his strength too. However, the gentleman kneading his hands said that was not the case at all. He had simply spent that energy to fight him. Unfortunately, however, the internal energy did not recover. Sang Lin, hearing those words, was very surprised. He started shouting, asking if he had really fought that terrifying creature. Jin Yu decided to revisit the topic and asked if he definitely didn't remember any details, like what he looked like. The guy started trembling and said that it only made it scarier. Even though he was weaker than the Lord, he was called a brilliant martial artist for a reason. Sang Lin lowered his voice and said that that unknown person had taken his strength so easily. In fact, he had even thought it was God for a while. Jin Yu, upon hearing this, laughed and asked what kind of nonsense this was. If it was really God, he would definitely not lose to him. The lad, on hearing that his master had won, immediately asked that he should tell more, for he was very curious. Jin Yu became more serious and said that that person wanted to take away his energy, so he fought with full strength. He thinks this brutal battle without sleep or food lasted about a month, and he's sure he won. And when their battle was over, that unknown man told him that if he killed him, he would be trapped outside of this place. The man asked if he had decided to die with him. Jin Yu replied that he hadn't thought about it yet, but it would be this creature who would die first. The creature asked if he really wanted it, wanted to overpower him. The creature was actually in the form of a huge human head. Jin Yu didn't stop. He thought about the fact that this guy was only sending a message and felt absolutely no emotion. So he grabbed his huge sword harder in order to deliver his blow, and realized that his words were true after all. And at that moment, he pierced the huge head, thinking that his too were not an idle sound. Because of this large release of energy, everything around him glowed. It was a space of loss, Jin Yu could pass it, leaving something dear to him behind. However, there was a chance to keep it. He had a choice of his victim. The gentleman said one phrase, and after that a voice was heard which replied that he could pass on. Jin Yu was the first person who was able to pass through without losing anything. The voice warned him that he would be watching to see if the guy could close this door. The leader said that that's how it all happened. There was something else, but he doesn't remember the details. But then suddenly, after a while of silence, he remembered and said that his sword Inmel was left in that very space. It's actually a holy sword that symbolizes the cult of the heavenly demon. The sword itself has nothing to do with it. However, Jin Yu, the Sen who led this squad, needed an item to absorb the remnants of the demonic cult. And the sword Inmel was the most suitable for the job. The master sighed and said that it was certainly a great pity. After all, he was the only one of his kind. There was no one else like him to be found. Sang Lin, hearing these words, was very surprised. He said that he spoke as if it wasn't a sword but some kind of pass. However, without it, he wouldn't be able to use Inmel's energy after all. Jin Yu said that it actually belonged to the secret techniques. However, there would be no problem with the 12-second technique of the first and second half. Sang Lin then asked if he had gotten it right. The master had lost 90% of his sword and 10% of something else. The leader had said anything was possible. He realized now that his core was almost empty. However, the energy wasted was not because of the battle. But the guy stood his ground and asked what about that unknown 10%. Jin Yu thought for a while and said that he didn't know himself. It's all very strange and the system is confusing. Sang Lin said that if that was the case, he would have chosen the energy and asked if maybe it wasn't something simple. Jin Yu replied that anything is possible, but he doesn't know what he protected by sacrificing that energy. Sang Lin looked at his hair at this moment and said, the thickness of his hair for sure. He assumed that if one restored energy, the hair would somehow regrow. Jin Yu immediately walked over to him and started looking at his head, thinking about the fact that he had such thick hair after all. Sang Lin didn't really like being given so much attention, so he asked how the leader had even recovered this energy. Jin Yu calmly replied that he killed the monsters in the gate at the Seoul station. Sang Lin turned around at this moment, looking at him and asked in surprise, was he really the one who had brushed them off? Jin Yu took his hand off his head and said that was right. His energy was recovering with every level increase, so it had to be hard work. The guy immediately jumped up from his seat and said that they were finished. However, they would go shopping first. Jin Yu at this moment began to think about this obscure word and asked if it meant shopping and wondered why all of a sudden. They headed towards the exit of the coffee shop, and Sang Lin said that actually his clothes were too conspicuous, and also wondered if he had told anyone his real name at all. Jin Yu followed him and said that he didn't say the real thing, but used what was in the martial world. The guy at this moment remembered that the name was Wang Gyu and exhaled in relief. He said that it was very good. Sang Lin explained that he was in no way allowed to attract the attention of the organization or the government in general. However, the guys did not notice that there was a surveillance camera in the establishment. An awakened one is actually a person who surpasses ordinary people in physical strength and also possesses unusual skills. Very often this is the name given to those who are chosen to fight evil. They are very brave people. Such people are quite valuable to the government. That is why the government and companies provide them with many privileges and a comfortable life. And the only thing the awakened ones have to do is to follow the rules of the government as well as the organization. Jin Yu Xiong is generally a good person. However, that doesn't mean he's compliant. While the guys were walking to the clothing store, Jiding Yu asked Sang Lin in surprise if he really wanted him to join the organization. However, he didn't understand why he would. After all, it's not necessary. In fact, if the awakened one could not be negotiated with, the organization already intervenes and uses its force. So what might happen if Jin Yu Sung, who never follows the rules and the organization that rules over everyone, meet? Of course, the organization would go up in flames. If the use of force doesn't work, they will decide to pressure one of the relatives. But who will be under pressure in this case? Sang Lin, while explaining all this to the gentleman, pointed his finger at himself, and said that of course he would be the one under pressure in this situation. While Jin Yu picked out his clothes and went to measure them, the guy thought that he needed to protect the obligatory leader and his family. At this moment, the gentleman came out of the fitting room, saying that he was already dressed. Sang Lin looked at him and said, "That's better." Jin Yu looked completely different now. He began to consider his image, and said that the clothes in this place were made of an interesting material that he had never seen before. At that moment, he saw the bags that Sang Lin was holding and asked if it was for him too. However, the guy replied that the bag contained some things that his daughter had asked for. Jin Yu immediately became more serious. He looked him straight in the eyes and asked him what her name was. Sang Lin said her name was Sang So Yoon. Then the Lord replied that she must be very pretty, since she looked like her father. He introduced Sang Lin as a woman, thinking that this was what his daughter looked like. However, the guy laughed and said that not only is she cute, but she's also very pretty. Many even said that she should become an idol or compete for the title of Miss Korea. And while paying for his purchases at the checkout counter, he suddenly turned around and asked why the gentleman was so nice all of a sudden. Because it wasn't his style. Jin Yu replied that he was just a city of them. The guy lost his powers and stayed in a world where he couldn't understand anyone. However, he was able to create a family and even live a decent life. Sang Lin felt very pleased by these words. He looked at the leader and was about to say something when he suddenly interrupted and asked if he had a job. The guy said that of course he was the president of a construction company. That cost him quite a lot of labor. Jin Yu was surprised when he heard this, and afterward he said that it meant that he had money. Sang Lin took out his bank card and said that he personally had enough for everything, and asked if he wanted anything. Jin Yu hesitated for a moment. After that, he asked if it could be that computer he straightened up. He also said that it was filmed by the Mercut, whether they could afford to buy such a thing. In fact, over a period of time in that cafe where the guys were sitting, the managers and waiter were shocked. The waiter told the manager that apparently there was smoke coming out of the computer. The man got angry and said he could see it himself, but he doesn't understand how the computer could have melted at all, and asked if maybe someone just poured something on it. Then the waiter looked at the manager and said that, in fact, there were footprints on the other table too. The man got angry and said that, in fact, it was all because of Seoul Station. By then, Sang Lin and the leader had already left the store. The guy said that if they were going to take pictures, it would be better to use a smartphone. However, he still agreed to buy it and asked if he needed anything else. Jin Yu smiled and looked at the guy and asked if the beer soju was expensive or not. He just really wanted to try it. Sang Lin, upon hearing this, laughed and said that of course he would buy him as much as he wanted. However, the gentleman said there is one more thing. The guy keeps laughing without even listening to him, said he would buy everything. Jin Yu was surprised and asked if he would really do it. After all, it looks expensive. However, the guy kept laughing and said that of course he would buy everything since he is Sang Lin. Then the leader pointed to a helicopter that was flying past them and said he wanted this. Sang Lin, upon hearing this, couldn't even believe his eyes. He asked if he was really talking about it now. Jin Yu said that's right. He wants a helicopter for himself. His partner didn't say anything to that. He just looked at him, and after that went on, asking if he was talking about the toy. If so, they are on the 3rd floor. Now they will go up and buy everything. However, Jin Yu stopped him and said not at all. He means the one that you can ride with the people inside. Sang Lin then turned to the gentleman and said that, in fact, the price of the real helicopter was a bit more than what he had. However, Jin Yu activated his abilities at this moment, touching the guy's shoulder, and asked if he really wanted to take back his words. What about his promise? Sang Lin began to cry out in pain and wondered why the Lord was using his strength at times like this. His shoulder was about to break, wasn't it? Then he couldn't take all the pain anymore, so he agreed and said he would buy it later. Jing Yue took his hand away and smiled and told him to remember because he had promised. The boy said that of course he wouldn't forget about it, and he thought to himself that the leader was somehow going crazy in general. However, Sang Lin said that they would come home first. The man was very surprised and asked why so quickly, since he didn't know anything about his life yet. The guy says he'll tell him everything on the way. However, he wants them to make a deal first. After all, for him to bring a stranger to his house, he needed a reason. By then, they had already arrived at Sang Lin's car and drove toward his house. Soon, they arrived at the house. The boy stopped the car and sat inside for a while. He thought about the fact that he had strained all his wits to come up with a story for the leader. However, he was still nervous, because he didn't know if everything would be okay, and if his family would believe the story. Jin Yu looked out the window and asked in surprise, "Is this really his house?" The boy replied that it was right. The leader was sitting in the back seat. Then, thinking about it, he said that his salary must be small because the house was so small. San Lin, hearing this, became angry. He began to shout at the master, asking, "Is he now comparing his house to a heavenly palace?" Actually, in Canada, a mansion like his is considered quite large and not many people can afford it. Jin Yu sighed and irritably asked why he was getting angry right away. He had figured it out, after all. There was no need to yell. He also said that actually having a small house is no reason to be embarrassed at all. You just have to put more effort into moving into a bigger one. Sang Lin couldn't listen to any more of this. Everything inside him was burning with anger. However, he didn't show it on the outside. Therefore, he simply turned to the master with a stone face and said that he had to go inside already. Then he muttered once more that Jin Yu was his nephew, and he was not allowed to point out anything to him or his wife. The master told Sang Lin that when they were in the extermination group, they were taught about spying and etiquette, and asked irritably, "Does he really think it will be so easy to be exposed?" The guy at this moment thought that surely the leader was good at this. After all, he was famous not only in martial arts but also in other things, so he was respected. But now he was calm after all, so he suggested that we should already go inside. Sang Lin actually addressed him in a very respectful and you manner. Jin Yu then told him not to address him like that. They were nephews after all. The guy smiled and thought that he now recognized his leader. After that, he addressed him as Yu Xiong and told them to get going. At this moment, they got out of the car and headed towards Sang Lin's house. They walked in silence. The gentleman was a little in the middle and surveyed the area. He thought about the fact that even though the yard was small, it looked quite cozy and nice. At that moment, a young girl came out to them. Seeing Sang Lin, she asked, "Has he already returned?" It was, of course, Sang Lin's wife. Her name was Yu Hie Yun. The girl looked at Jin Yu and asked, "Are they really having guests?" Sang Lin was a little worried about all of this. He looked at the guy behind him and said that yes, that was his nephew. Turning to Yu Sung, he asked him to say hello. Jin Yu just looked at them for a while, and after that he bowed and said that he was the nephew of his mother's brother. He greeted the girl and said his name. Sang Lin then immediately turned to his wife and said that she was probably a little surprised, and if she was interested in how it came to be, he could explain it. Then, for a while, he explained to his wife how it had happened. And after that, he said that that was why he was going to live with them, and also asked if it could be done. Yu Hie Yun, after listening to him, was silent for a while. She just stood there and looked at her husband. It was unclear from her reaction what she was thinking. The guy at this moment thought that this whole thing was a failure and his plan wouldn't work. Jin Yu will kill him then. However, at this point, the wife did say that if this was really the case, she was fine with him living with them. Sang Lin was very surprised and asked why she was suddenly so agreeable. It was definitely his request, but still he didn't understand. His wife took his hands and asked him how it was. Why? Could she kick out his only blood relative? And in that moment, that stress that had been accumulated, and all those times Sang Lin had because of the leader, immediately evaporated, and he felt calmer at heart. The wife took the purchases from her husband and saw their guest off. The girl said that she would give the things to her daughter, because she had to explain that she now had an uncle. Sang Lin was left standing alone. He thought about the fact that even though the alibi he made up was really plausible, she still believed him. The man thought that he had met a very good person after all. He was very grateful to his wife, and thought of trying to get his strength back quickly so he could be the best husband for her. with the thick hair she liked so much. As they walked towards the house, Yu Hye-yun looked at her husband and thought that she was not stupid to believe such a thing. And he's so naive, but he's still very nice. When they entered the house, his wife immediately inquired how old his nephew was. Jin Yu was about to say over 100, however Sang Lin interrupted him and said that he was 18 years old. He was the same age as their daughter. Yu Hye-yun made a surprised expression on her face and then said that it was cute enough and it meant that he went to the same school as their daughter. From the hallway they entered the spacious and bright living room. Then the girl turned to her guest and introduced herself. However, he could just call her auntie. Jin Yu kneeled down at this moment and bowed, saying that he understood and called her aunt. Yu Hye-yun laughed nervously and told the guy that he actually didn't have to bow all the time. To change the uncomfortable topic of conversation, she said her daughter would be here soon, so they could get acquainted. Sang Lin was very worried, but said that it was really true. Then she started to go upstairs to lay out her purchases. And so when the guys were left alone, Sang Lin started yelling at the leader, asking why he was talking so formally. Does he really want to be exposed? Jin Yu was very surprised and asked, what's wrong? After all, she is his aunt according to their legend. The boy was very surprised and asked if that was how they addressed relatives in Chungwon. The gentleman replied that that was how they did it. But Sang Lin told him not to use such archaic words anyway, but to speak directly as he did now, informally. Yu Hye-yun was surprised as she walked up the stairs, for her husband had told her when they met that he had lost his entire family after a terrible accident. But then she does not understand where this unknown nephew came from and why so unexpectedly. Although he is the president of a construction firm, Sang Lin was an ordinary laborer at the beginning of their relationship. A lot of things about him confused her then. She had a feeling as if he wasn't from this world at all. Sang Lin was even unfamiliar with Korean culture, and when the girl gave him a cup of coffee, he reacted very strangely as if he had never seen it before. One day, 3 low-ranking awakened ones who were at odds with the organization suddenly invaded a construction site and captured workers. And then, in front of Yu Hye-ying's eyes, Sang Lin had defeated 3 awakened ones at once with just 1 wooden stick. Everyone was in shock after what had happened, and when the criminals were arrested, a girl came up and asked him how he had managed to deal with them at all. Sang Lin was pleased that she was paying attention to him and calmly said that they couldn't even use their own power, so it was easy enough. Yu Hye-yun then began to follow him closely, as a result of which she was able to find out that her husband came from the north. At first, she was very concerned about it. However, he later severed all ties with the northerners and began to live only for his family. The girl looked down at them from above and thought, maybe this kid is an agent with the north. Maybe he just happened to meet this guy somewhere and decided to help him. But they certainly can't be related because they're too different. At this moment, the guys sat down suddenly opposite each other. Jin Yu said that even though he was the head of the family, yet he needed to get permission from his wife, he thought it was something strange. Sang Lin explained that this world actually had a slightly different setup, and there were no kings or any emperors here. The gentleman, hearing this, was very much surprised and asked, but who then, in that case, could govern the country? The guy explained that every few years people vote to elect a new so-called king. Jin Yu thought for a while, and after that, he said, then it all turns out that it was done for the sake of people's lives. Sang Lin tried to contain his anger again and said that it was basically like this. It was actually very difficult for him to explain it all, so the guy decided to leave it at that. Sang Lin said after a while that a system in which the opinions of others are respected is called democracy, and in this world it is common even in families. Jin Yu replied that he understood everything, and then repeated the word democracy and asked him to memorize the word. Yu Hye-yun, who was still watching them from above, was very surprised to hear this, for she realized that he was definitely from the north, since he didn't know what democracy was. However, the guys continued their conversation. Sang Lin turned to the master and said that there was actually something else he should warn him about. Jin Yu immediately asked what it could be, but Sang Lin angrily looked at his leader and told him not to even dare to think about his daughter. Since she went to wife, her looks are quite attractive. Jin Yu thought about it and said that it turns out his daughter went to his wife, not him. The guy confirmed these words. However, he was still angry, so the gentleman decided not to annoy him even more, so he replied that he understood everything and it wouldn't happen. Sang Lin looked into the leader's eyes and remembered that he had seen such an impudent face before, and at this moment he remembered where he had first seen it. It was quite a few years ago one of the army leaders approached the leader of a demonic cult, asking for permission to tranquility in that world. Then he looked straight at Jin Yu and told him to obey the emperor's decree and fall to his knees. The Lord laughed upon hearing this and asked if he was seriously telling the demonic cult leader to fall to his knees right now. Jin Yu, for reassurance, said that he promises him that he will never touch his daughter and made that face again. Sang Lin remembered that this is the expression he makes when he tries not to laugh. His daughter even received a lot of business cards from the company on the street, and at school, guys are lining up for her. But then he wondered if the leader would even know about it, since he came from Chungwan. And then he had a great idea. San Lin turned to the master, said that his wife was beautiful, and asked, did he not think her beautiful enough? The guy at this moment glared angrily at the leader. Jin Yu was already starting to get worried. He remained silent for a while, and after that, coughing, he said that not at all, he doesn't judge people by their appearance. Sang Lin then asked why he was then suddenly coughing and started, and what kind of suspicious reaction is he having? Jin Yu also started to raise his voice and asked why he was the one being disrespectful. How old was he anyway? Sort of like a little over 50. Sang Lin then clapped his hands and said that it was definitely good to be a 100-year-old monster. However, it was not a long way to the grave. He also added that his wife is very beautiful. It's just that in this world the standards of beauty are a little different, and what was considered beautiful in Chungwan is considered ugly in this place. Jin Yu was already bored with this conversation. He turned away from the guy and said that he understood everything, but Sang Lin still continued to insist on his point and asked for the master to say, in that case, that she is beautiful? The leader was silent at this point. Then he pictured the interrogation room where he and Sang Lin were sitting. Jin Yu was in prison uniform and said that, in fact, his wife was very scary and apologized for those words. Sang Lin slammed his fist on the table at this moment and told him to leave his house at this instant. Picture it all in your head, sir. Then turned to the lad and told him to think hard, for it was a very good thing. If his wife isn't pretty to him, that means he's definitely not going to be interested in her, and consequently not interested in his daughter. Sang Lin thought about his words for a while. Then he said that he was right at this point. It was already dark outside. At this very time in Qingdao Liutkin Airport, a man was sitting in a special room and he was formally dressed. Then a guy suddenly came in to see him. He apologized for keeping him waiting and called him Mr. Wall Sung. Wall Sung looked at the guy and told him to take a seat. He said his name was Kang Se-ren, and also said that he was an A-ranked saboteur and his mom was Korean. A man asked if it was true that he had gotten on the list of participants at the gate at Seoul Station. Kang Se-ren said that was indeed the case. Wol Sung then asked that he report what he knew. The man did not look at his interlocutor and said he was there by pure chance, and afterward told him the whole story he knew. Wol Sung is the head of the Chinese organization. When the guy finished his story, he asked how strong this Wang Gyu was, but then changed his mind and asked what level he was even at. Kang Si thought for a while, and after that, he said that he guessed that he thought his level was more than 200. Mr. on hearing this, was very surprised that a teenager could be of such high caliber, and it was very strange that he knew nothing about the system. Kang Si said that although it was unlikely, he might have lost his memory. However, Wol Sung said that he disagreed with that thought. After all, if you crushed the fruit in a blender, the residue would remain on the skin, and it would be funny if it turned out to be as thick as the juice itself that day. The guy was very surprised and asked how they even got to this conversation, but then all of a sudden Mr. turned to him and told him that from this day forward, he would be working in the 5th Citizen Safety Unit. The team is not yet fully formed. However, it is only a matter of time. Kang Si was very surprised when he heard where he was being redirected to. In fact, it is the responsibility of the people in this department to cover the tracks of manipulation, intimidation, bribery, as well as murder. This is the most important position in the organization. There's no room for a regular support person. That was why the guy was so surprised. He didn't understand why it was him. Wolsung said that the goal of Department Number 5 would be to eliminate this Wang Gyu. When it was deep evening, Sang Lin and his wife had already gone to bed. Then the girl suddenly turned to him. Yu Hye-yun said that it would probably be hard enough for Yu Sung in his new home, and suggested that maybe they could all sleep together that day. Sang Lin thought about her suggestion for a moment. Afterwards, he said that it would probably be better after all. At that moment, the man thought that, in fact, there was no one in this world who was kinder than his wife. After their conversation, Sang Lin took his pillow and started to go up to the master's room to spend the night with him. When the guy was already near the door, he was about to knock. However, the door suddenly opened, and Jin Yu looked at him angrily, asking if he had come at last. Sang Lin, walking into the room, wondered in surprise if he knew he was coming. Maybe he had overheard their conversation. Jin Yu asked in surprise, did he really think he was so untactful? He just opened the door when he sensed his presence. Sang Lin remembered at this moment that the leader had this ability. He could recognize all sounds within a 500-meter radius. It could be whispers or just the footsteps of insects. He will hear it all, and he will hear it very well. And in order not to go crazy from so many sounds, the leader practiced controlling the flow of incoming information. It was unpleasant for the guy to realize that he could actually hear all the conversations if he wanted to. When Jin Yu sat down on the bed, he asked if he liked the room. The guy said that what they call a bed is actually very soft and he likes it. Sang Lin explained that it was actually an image that was inside the sofa, making it very comfortable to sleep on. Jin Yu thought at that moment that this world is a very wonderful world with so many things that make human life easier. That day was the first time he used the most ordinary things such as TV, telephone, and computer. The guy explained that in this world, instead of martial arts, people just developed in science. The gentleman agreed and said that was what interested him the most. Jin Yu asked why there were no martial arts in this world. Had the knowledge of them been lost? Sang Lin said that they probably weren't there at all from the beginning, and no one just didn't know about them. Then the boy asked if the leader recognized the place. Jin Yu said that it's a rather strange question since it's his home. However, the guy said that he wasn't referring to that, but to the place on the map. The leader hesitated, and Sang Lin said that this was the southern capital of Goguryeo. In the year 1392, the Joseon country was formed in its place. That's how the Korean Empire and the Republic of Korea came into existence in the year 1910, and they are currently in the Republic of Korea in the year 2022. Jin Yu, upon hearing this, realized that they had somehow ended up in the future. However, there were certainly positive and negative aspects to it. Sang Lin asked him if he remembered the name of the first emperor of the Ming dynasty. So it is Mingzhu Yuanchang who is the founder of this country. When the master heard this, he was very surprised. He said that the first emperor was Zhu Jianghu, so how come? Sang Lin said that there is no mention of Jin Yu Sung's name among the princes of the Koreas, not even in the royal family of the Jin clan. In fact, he even has a theory that their worlds were created as twins. For some reason, however, the energy in one of them disappeared. Jin Yu, upon hearing this, smiled and said that it was very cool. Sang Lin was even embarrassed, but then he asked what about the gate in them, since they give something like internal energy for leveling up. Many people say that no one knows the reason for the appearance of all these gates. Jin Yu then asked if he had ever been there. The guy replied that he really didn't, since that's usually what the organization does, and asked if leveling up really gives you internal energy. The leader replied that the stats gained for it could be exchanged for it. It was possible if you had the internal energy from 120 years of cultivation. Sang Lin was very surprised when he heard this, and after that, he was upset. After all, he didn't have that much energy. Jin Yu was surprised and asked if he hadn't practiced in this place. The guy said not at all, for the mere thought of having all sorts of charms in his blood threw him into a shiver, so he didn't cultivate. But the leader at this point said that he blocks these particles with energy while breathing, so it's so much easier. He pointed to the seat next to him on the bed and suggested we begin with the process of removing impurities and stagnation in the body using internal energy. Sang Lin, hearing this, was very surprised. He asked if the leader was really going to open the blocked meridians by tapping. Jin Yu said that this was exactly what he was going to do, as he needed to warm up the blood a bit first. Actually, the technique that the leader was going to do is called Chugun Kwachel, and it allows you to get rid of blood clots by directly affecting the blood vessels. However, you will feel like a beaten dog afterwards. Of course, Sang Lin had no choice, so he approached the gentleman and he started doing his procedure without even warning the guy about it, who wanted to mentally prepare himself. Jin Yu pressed one of the points on his body so the guy immediately relaxed and fell onto the bed. Sang Lin realized that this would not end well. Then the leader started to use his magic power and asked, "He did run away when he saw him, didn't he?" The guy had to know what the poison was giving him. How could he ignore it? At this moment, thousands of charges rushed through Sang Lin's entire body. Jin Yu, smiling evilly, continued to do his technique and told him to calm down. After all, he is only doing this for his sake. Sang Lin, who was in a lot of pain, wondered if he was taking revenge on him now. The leader is very vindictive after all. The next morning, a guy named Xiong Benim, who was in the hospital, woke up. When the system window appeared in front of him, he realized that it wasn't a dream after all, and he had indeed awakened that day. However, at that moment, two men suddenly entered his room, one of them entering to apologize. It was the leader Han Jin-Hu, who even had a fruit basket in his hands, and also his deputy, a man named Im Hyun-sang. When they came in, the manager said that it had been a long time since they had seen him. The man then introduced himself and said he was a 60th graduate of the police academy. Xiong Benim remembered it immediately, but he didn't understand why the room had suddenly become so dark, so he assumed that maybe the light bulb had just burned out. The room was actually quite bright, but it was just that he had been given special powers. The man approached him and told him that he was currently the branch manager of an organization in Seoul. He realizes that he does not have time for him right now, but he needs to ask some questions. Xiong Benim was fine with that. However, he asked them to move away a little because he was so uncomfortable. After that, a conversation ensued between the men. After a while, the leader and his assistant left the room. The assistant said that he thought it was all true. That the teenager named Wang Yu had cleared the gate by himself was true. The supervisor agreed with him. But then he thought about it, and said that if you put their information together with his story, it all fit together very accurately. Then suddenly the assistant was very surprised and asked, "Does he really know something?" Jin-Hu looked at him carefully and asked, "Does he still not understand?" Then, after waiting for an answer, he asked what could be behind the disappearance of an awakened man of such a high rank, and a hero as well. There's only one answer to this question. This guy is an opponent of the organization. The aide was very surprised and asked, "Is he really a banned person?" But then the leader asked, "What if Wang Jiyu awakened from the people who are against the organization? Maybe he is their trump card." The aide then said it would then be understandable why there was so little information on him. Jin-Hu added at this point that everything was now falling into place. His actions, lack of basic knowledge of the world, strange clothes, manner of speech, name, gender, age, and appearance. However, this is all false, and they must be sure to add another criterion. It's absolute power, which can be called purpose, as the name lowers imagination and logic. The aide was very happy at this point. He said that this was what he expected from the manager. The man is worthy of respect. The supervisor then told him not to relax, and at that moment, the deputy realized why he had saved other civilians. Jin-Hu said this is exactly what it takes to change the system. You have to get the support of the citizens, and the fact that it couldn't be handled by the organization was good publicity for them. However, perhaps this is just the beginning of a war with the people against the organization. The deputy said that finally the system of organization that unites the awakened will be destroyed, and that really scares him, but then suddenly someone called them. The man became frightened and asked, "Who could be calling at this hour?" He answered the call and told the supervisor that they had received valuable information. The target was using the dialect of the Choya province. The man, upon hearing this, said that this was quite unusual. Afterward, he immediately ran and told the deputy to get them back to headquarters quickly. The next morning, in a construction company, the workers suddenly noticed that their president had been looking very good lately. One day, one of them dared to say this to his face and asked, "Has he really started taking some vitamins?" Of course, the leader of this company was Sang Lin. He told Executive Woo Kim that last time he had said that he had gotten taller. But the girl agreed with the executive and said the president has just been really shining lately. Sang Lin, upon hearing this, was very surprised. However, it was indeed true. He had gotten more and more beautiful since he had met the leader. In fact, he thought it was all due to the effect of the technique the leader was using. And there was a lot more hair than before. Just like that, 10 days had passed since the leader started living in his house. And at this point, Jin Yu had sold his soul to the television and the internet. The leader spent most of his time watching documentaries from the special channel and learned a lot of things about the world. One day, Sang Lin watched the program with him and said, "Is that really it? No wonder there was no such thing in their world." Jin Yu said admiringly that he now knew what an earthquake was and laughed, saying that that ritual was so useless after all. However, what surprised Sang Lin the most, of course, was that the earth was round. When he first heard about it, he thought the whole world had gone crazy. Jin Yu looked at the guy and asked if he knew it. Here he was, for example. He knew everything, but the guy resented it and told him not to lie because he didn't, and also asked if he didn't remember what he said when he went to the Western lands about what would happen to him if he collided and fell off the edge. He even told him to relax even then, because the planet was round. Sang Lin was surprised and asked, "Weren't those words of comfort? However, how did he know about this? They haven't studied this at all, right?" Jin Yu said that actually one day he decided to go very high up. That's when he saw their round land. Sang Lin, hearing this, was very surprised. He asked how a person could even reach the stratosphere. But then he said that if he could handle that guy in the gate, there was nothing to be surprised about after all. The leader's second hobby was martial arts novels and comics, but this was in principle expected. However, what was very interesting was that the worlds from the novella and their home world were very similar. One day, while reading one of the books, Jin Yu asked, "Doesn't this mean that there's still someone who managed to open the gate?" Sang Lin said it was very unlikely. When he looked at what he was reading, he said he hadn't seen this in a long time. These comics reminded him of his homeland, so he looked through them often. However, when the main characters looked stronger than the leader, the man just threw them away, not realizing if it was even possible. Yes, and in general the writers needed at least some operation on reality. Therefore, such works were simply thrown away by him. In fact, Jin Yu lived quite quietly, even surpassing Sang Lin's expectations. But then suddenly the guy got a call from his daughter at work. He immediately picked up the phone and in a joyful voice asked her what was wrong. However, at that moment her daughter started screaming into her phone saying that Yu Sung was bullying her again. She was crying and hysterical. Sang Lin was worried. He tried not to react to it, but then he asked her what had happened this time. The daughter started to tell everything. In fact, there was still one problem in their house after all. And that was that the leader and Sang Lin's daughter were constantly fighting and squabbling over the television set. They could also fight over tasty snacks. In fact, they fought over little things, but several times a day. After listening to his daughter, Sang Lin thought that she wouldn't do such a thing without a reason, so he replied that he understood and would be back soon. At this moment, Do San Lina was in her room. She was very upset because Jin Yu was very annoyed with her. She didn't understand how it was even possible to eat 2 whole scoops of ice cream. She wished their guest had left at least one for her. Seo Yoon tried to calm down at such thoughts after all. She realizes perfectly well that there was no such thing in the north. However, she still can't forgive him. At this point, the girl there became furious that she even threw her toy against the door. In fact, a few days ago, the girl's mom called her to a coffee shop after school and told her that she should know about who her father really is. Seo Yoon was very surprised and asked who he was, if he was a spy. She actually said that phrase as a joke. However, her mom said that it was absolutely true. Her father and Yu Song came from the north. The girl didn't expect to hear that, so she even choked on her drink. Seo Yoon couldn't believe that her father was really a spy from the north. However, if you look at his face, everything fits together and it's obvious. That same evening, the girl called her father's business partner and asked for a DNA test for paternity. Soon the results came back, and the test result was that there was no match. Jin Yu was neither her father's son nor nephew. Seo Yoon suddenly speculated, perhaps his father is just perhaps Sang Lin's comrade from the north. At that point, the girl gathered herself and went downstairs and told her mom that she would go out with her friends. Hye Yoon was fine with that. However, she told her daughter to come back for dinner. The girl passing by Jin Yun thought about the fact that all he does all day long is just that. So it's watching TV, playing on the computer, or reading comic books. She thought maybe it was because he had no friends in Korea. Seo Yoon felt sorry for him. After all, he's a good-looking guy. In fact, he even reminded her of a certain hero. So she decided that she would treat him better. That day, Jin Yu was watching a program on TV that showed man's first steps on the moon. He liked this program very much, because he was learning more and more new things every day. However, at that moment, a girl came up to him and interrupted his viewing. He immediately moved away from her, telling her to go away, for a very important scene was about to take place. Seo Yoon was not offended by his words. She thought it was really cute since he can't even look her in the eye. Then she asked him if he wanted her to buy anything for the return trip. Jin Yu was very dissatisfied, for the girl had torn him away from watching. So he said that he didn't need anything. Seo Yoon was only amused by this situation. In fact, she had received over 100 declarations of love and proposals from the company before. Does he really think that the first one who pretends as if he's not interested in her